So hi everyone, my name is Patrick Hone, Kademi co-founder, and in today's discussion, we're talking with Edward Thompson from Core Loyalty. Hi Ed.
Hi.
Now, a little bit of background on Ed. He's the president of Core Loyalty and specializes in business to business and business to consumer loyalty and reward programs. Now, Ed spent the last 32 years designing, implementing and evolving incentive, learning and loyalty programs in the UK, Europe, Canadian and US markets. He's worked at the forefront of some of the largest programs in their respective markets in both strategic and operational capacities, with an excellent track record of driving program success. Now, Ed, in today's topic, we're going to be discussing reducing failure in incentive programs, which is very relevant to Kademi because our software is used to build channel incentive programs. So I think a good starting point is to sort of understand, why is this topic important to you and why do you think it's relevant today?
I think it's relevant today because if we rewind the clock, pre-web, whenever you built a channel program, you really had to invest your thought process in the construct of that program and whether it was going to resonate well with the audience, because you couldn't just change it on the fly. You were creating content, you were printing content, you were distributing across multiple markets. Get it wrong at launch and you would suffer for months. It was also obviously naturally, as a byproduct, more difficult to measure. With the advent of obviously platforms like Kademi to run channel programs, we can change stuff on the fly. But what it also does is make agencies and clients become a little more complacent. Well, we can automate stuff. We can we can set it up to run, and then we can kind of not spend a lot of time on it. And what that actually can breed is complacency through efficiency. So as a byproduct, what you wind up with are programs that are sort of, fairly me too, and not really necessarily resonating well with the audience.
Okay. Now maybe just before we sort of delve into this a little bit deeper, a good starting point would just be sort of, well, what are the elements that go into a channel incentive program, just so our listeners understand what it is we're exactly talking about, because I want to go into what are those common failures that we see in programs and delve into that a little bit deeper. So when you talk about a channel incentive program, what are those core elements that go into that?
Well, I always like to say the most important part of this is always the communication. 60% of the success of any program is how effectively you're going to communicate with that audience, how you're going to engage them, and therefore, incent them, if you like, to change their behavior. Of course, all of the other key components, the incentive construct, the rewards, any points or points economy, are all key components to driving that. But it's probably led by the communication and engagement strategy.
Yeah, okay. And we're talking here, say, for example, manufacturers and distributors are selling to and through other businesses. For example, it might be a manufacturer engaging a retailer who sells its products at point of purchase, right, to consumers. And
absolutely.
They're engaging these, call them channel partners, as part of an incentive channel promotion or program.
Indeed. And yeah, sorry, I focused there on the components, and you're absolutely right. If you look at the, if you like, route to market, it can be as simple as rewarding a channel partner for selling their product, or it can be as complicated as looking at all of the levels within the channel, from the manufacturer right out to the end consumer, and trying to measure and reward each level within that route to market.
Sure. And we, Kademi, we sort of talk about parallel programs, running at the same time, where a manufacturer who maybe sits at the top, they're engaging distributors, but they might also be engaging retailers and going around the distributor and wanting to actually engage the retailer themselves and incentivize them to obviously sell more of their product to consumers.
Yeah, and before you leave that topic, often one of the biggest issues within that channel or route, if you like, is the ability to measure sales. One can measure sales out from a manufacturer to a distributor, but the distributor may not share the sales out data to their customer. And yet, if we can engage their customers, we have to get them to make sales claims in order to measure those sales out. So the complexity there, and the ability to measure sales, and therefore obviously define performance and progress, is a key aspect to why Kademi offers, I think, such strength and depth in terms of both data feeds and in terms of sales submissions, for example.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And I think, these sort of channel programs as well, we're not just talking about that moment of incentivizing, we also talk about onboarding the channel partners, training and enabling these partners to be more effective, by starting to understand, well, what's the product I'm selling, who am I selling to, and actually engaging that end customer. Around and mixed around that is, of course, all of the communications, incentivization, the rewards, payouts, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you bring that one up. Actually, one of the topics that seems to come up more and more recently, which I thought had sort of gone away many years ago, is this principle of saying, you know what, we can offer far stronger incentives to our channel, and we can give higher payouts if we make it tougher for them to participate. In other words, you've got to pass this training course before you're allowed to be in the incentive program. And that's an interesting, qualifying to be in an incentive rather than just automatically being in it is an interesting way of engaging and maximizing the potential of the audience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because you need to enable your partners to succeed, right? And how do you do that? Well, training's one of those channels. Now, just to sort of flip this and look at this in a different sort of light, take HubSpot, for example. Now, I think when you go and buy HubSpot software, you can't buy it without being onboarded and trained. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you pay, it's about 3,000 US minimum to be onboarded and trained before you can actually, use their software. I think when I last looked at their website, there's this extra line item saying 3,000 training, onboarding, whatever it may be. And it makes sense, right? If you're going to sell software to somebody, and if they don't know how to use that software, how are they going to succeed? Okay, it's probably just going to be left in the corner somewhere. No one's going to touch it. They're not going to succeed. So I think the same applies with channel and incentive programs. If you're a manufacturer or distributor, you're trying to sell through these channels. Well, you need to enable these partners to succeed.
Absolutely. In many cases, I mean, would you buy an automotive vehicle, an automotive brand off a dealer whose staff are not trained to sell that product or service it? You wouldn't, exactly. Right? Would you have a contractor come and install air conditioning in your home from a particular brand of air conditioning if they're not trained on that air conditioning unit? So ergo, you've got to have a situation where these contractors or dealers are both qualified and then rewarded for their performance, but not the other way around.
Yeah. So there are different sort of elements that come together, to sort of build a successful channel program. But let's just talk about some of those common failures and identify what they are and how businesses looking to launch a channel program, how they can mitigate that.
Right. Do you want me to kick that off?
Yeah.
Some of the typical things. I mean, it's funny. I've been lucky enough to work in the big agencies and the small ones and work with clients who do a lot of the stuff themselves and other clients who want, the provider or agency to do it. And, if we take as a given, you've got to design a program that resonates with the audience, right? That you're going to fail if you design a program that doesn't motivate the audience to participate. So if we make that a given, that you can design a program that is going to appeal to the audience, what are the things that are then going to make that program fail? Well, one of the most common things I see is when you say to a client, okay, what are your objectives for this program? And they don't have any. Well, we've run it for 5 years and we need to keep running it. Well, why? Well, because my boss said we got to keep running it. No, I need a reason. A lot of clients don't have objectives, and alongside that, they don't have critical success factors. So when you sit down monthly, quarterly, annually and say, how are we doing? How we're doing is subjective. Well, the regional manager in the East thinks it's great. Well, great, but what are you going to say to the CFO when you're spending $1.5 million and we're not seeing an improvement in sales or margin? So not having objectives and not having critical success factors often, I think, are the beginning of the end of a successful program, because you're unable to justify to your client or justify to your program whether it's actually heading north or south in the right direction.
Then, before you even design a program, Ed, the first thing you should do is look at what those goals are, those critical success factors, because it makes sense, right?
Totally, absolutely.
If you don't know what direction you're heading in, what goals you need to achieve along that journey.
Absolutely. And I've been lucky enough to come across situations, especially legacy programs, where there's a belief they have to, they start out with a budget. Well, we spent $1 million last year, so we've got to spend $1 million this year. And in fact, when you look at the objectives, I've had situations where you can see if they spent half of that, they may actually move the needle better than spending that budget, which sounds absurd, doesn't it? But that's what legacy does. So, objectives and budget, and understanding really from a design and construct perspective where we're trying to take this thing is critical. And also within that, it's about audience in. You will have heard this analogy, and many people listening to this will have heard this analogy. You're sitting there with a client and they're saying, well, we actually want to make sure that within this there's a travel trip next year and we need it to be golf. And you go, well, why do you need it to be golf? Your audience don't like golf. Yeah, but my boss likes golf. And as absurd as that sounds, that still is a thing within some of these programs. And so if you've got to make it audience in, what are the rewards that are going to resonate? What's going to motivate them? What, setting goals for these people and driving growth, what's going to make it work? And as you say, sitting down at the beginning and establishing those will make all the difference 6-12 months in.
So that could be, one of those sort of, elements of failure in a program where you assume what your participants, your target audience want in terms of rewards. And rewards could be everything from cash payouts to merchandise, gift cards, reloadable cards. It could be donations to charity, a whole heap of different things, right?
Exactly. And I'll give you a great analogy. We were working on a program for people that do drywalling in houses. And interestingly enough, they love gift cards, but you know what they would walk over broken glass for? Branded T-shirts. As many branded T-shirts as we could give them. And the simple reason being is they put a branded T-shirt on each day and they throw it away at the end of the day because it's covered in powder and crap, right? So these people would redeem for branded T-shirts, which were costing very little. They wanted those over gift cards. But you would traditionally say closer to cash is more appealing, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So that's meaningful, right?
Meaningful.
Yeah. So within Kademi, we actually have our employee recognition program. And one of the things that we did was to reach out with every employee and ask them what sort of rewards were important to them. And we found that there were a mix of different rewards, things from time off to cash to merchandise. So we built a program around that fulfilled all of those needs. And we can do that, right? You don't just have to have one type of reward, and everyone's different. People at different life stages in their life, right? I've just recently had a baby. Okay, she's not recently, a year ago, which has flown by. But there are things that, hey, if I maybe cash was important to me, or merchandise where there are things that I can purchase that I can give to my little one, right? That's meaningful. There might be people who are saving up for a mortgage or something like that. So cash payouts would be important to them. Everyone's different at different life stages. So I think appealing to that audience is important. So
I was going to say you've nailed it. And that's very audience in, right, Patrick? That's really audience in.
So you think about failure and how to mitigate that. Well, maybe if you've already got a captured audience, maybe you have a list of, dealers or retailers, whoever they are, already on file. You could do a little bit of research, send out a survey, because you may have already run programs previously and you're thinking about launching a new program. Maybe you've never launched a program. Maybe you've just been doing it in a spreadsheet for years or something like that.
Yeah.
You could reach out, do a quick survey, and actually ask your audience, well, what's important to you? What would work for you?
Exactly.
How can we support you, enable you, et cetera, et cetera? And then you use that feedback and filter it into your program. And that's as simple as putting together, a quick survey. I mean, we have a survey capability in Kademi. It could take you half an hour. Upload your list, send out an email, and collect that feedback.
But it's also truly making sure that whilst you're on the topic of rewards, we're talking about reducing failure in channel incentives. So yes, if we've understood from our audience what appeals and what motivates them most, and we've provided those rewards, that's great. We've got to price them right.
Yeah.
They've got to have the right perception. But we also have to make sure that the rewards mix is right. There are many examples of programs where you'll walk them down the road of merchandise when they're screaming for gift cards, but you won't give them gift cards. And then you'll suddenly release one gift card and suddenly all of the redemption flows towards that gift card. And then you pull it away again. It was a limited inventory or whatever. Thinking through the path we're walking them down, the behaviors you talked about, are they a saver or are they an immediate redeemer? And all of those things really matter, but it's also about building the credibility for the brand. The sponsor of the program, their brand credibility is as important within their channel incentive as it is within their product brand itself, simply because.
Oh, we've lost you.
One sec, mate. I'm going to have to shut my door. You're going to have to edit this bit. It's that time of day. I fed the dog before the meeting, right? And it's like having a kid that cries.
I like it when things happen. I have my cat jump up, my baby crawl in, scream. It's fantastic.
It's just when you're recording it. when you're recording it.
So where were we at?
We were talking about rewards mix, and we're also talking about brand reputation, right? You're building your brand with your channel partner as much through your channel program as you are through your products and customer service. So you better make sure that whatever expectations you create through your channel program, you're consistent about. Don't keep, bait and switching on them. If I'm saving for something, you then take that reward away from me, I'm going to be pretty disappointed, right? I'm going to be pretty frustrated. Or you change my target and I don't make the travel trip, or there's a lot of stuff that you've got to be consistent about in your program promise, if you like. Your program value proposition.
So moving on from the reward aspect of a channel program, and we've spoken just now about one of those failures could be you're basically serving the wrong type of reward that connects and delights. Let's talk about some other things around communication, ongoing program management. I love this idea of the idea that you build a website and they'll come. The world will come to your website. They don't. Your website just sits there and it stagnates.
Exactly.
How do you create engagement, right? And you do that through, SEO, running ads, social. You bring traffic to your website, and then you can actually, to your point earlier, you can set targets and goals, number of, visitors that then turn as a funnel into leads, and then leads turn into demonstrations or, sales conversations, and then they convert to a sale. So you can look at that as a funnel. What I'm interested in is when you launch a channel program, there's that initial setup, strategy, we'll set up the program, we'll launch it, but then what happens, Because you can make assumptions at the beginning, like we've just discussed. You can collect feedback and, inject that into your strategy. But when it goes live, this idea that it's just going to succeed, I don't think that's always the case, right?
I don't think it's ever the case. Honestly, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I always like to say that a perfectly designed and launched program at the day of launch is about 70% optimized. So you're still 30% of the way to go, and you've perfected the launch. I think where it really starts is the team. It doesn't matter whether you're agency, client, a combination of both. If I've worked with many people like this. If you haven't got a team on the day-to-day management of the program, or an individual who have sufficient time to focus on the key aspects of the program, we're going to start to, it's going to start to unwind. Is the individual or are the team properly trained on using the software? Have they got the tools they need to engage the audience and look after the audience? Do we have a strategy and plan to follow from a communication perspective? And as I say, do we have the time to deliver that? So we may well have journey-based and triggered communications across the program platform, which is something we do a lot of within Kademi, but we equally may have determined that there's going to be an custom email cadence of 2 a month or 1 a week. And that takes time and thought to make sure that it's relevant to the audience. It's perhaps segmented to certain sectors of the audience, and it's driving engagement back. Are we using gamification tools to bring that audience in? Are we using sales claims as a way to bring them in? Are we using things like when we're communicating with our email marketing, are we making sure we're not actually giving all the answers in the email and we're driving to the click? So again, we get the login to the platform. All those things, I think, do come back to, firstly, top of my list would be team, because team drives enthusiasm, which ultimately drives engagement of the audience. And don't get me wrong, we don't need a team necessarily of a lot of people, nor do we need to necessarily spend a lot of time. We need to make smart decisions and set it up right. And then we need to farm that properly or work it, maybe meet once a week for 30 minutes. But just to go through and say, what have we done well? What could we do better? What should we focus on next week, next month? Make sure you've got your tactical reviews in place, your monthly, more strategic reviews, and that we're tracking progress against those critical success factors we talked about earlier.
Okay, right? So one of those failures is not having the right team in place to support that program ongoing.
And that,
so beyond the team,
that would be top of the list, I think.
Yeah, okay. So beyond the team, then what are the other failures that you see? I mean, you talk about communication. Is a failure, for example, a lack of communication, not engaging with your channel on a regular basis?
Sometimes it's a lack of, sometimes it's too much. More often, it's not relevant in either case. So it's about being relevant. Right time, right place, if you like, if you want to view it that way. But yeah, from a communication perspective, that's often a piece. Another piece that we've seen certainly become an issue within programs, sometimes post-launch and sometimes at launch, is complexity. So people will try and cram in too much, not appreciating that the audience actually isn't going to absorb all of that. And there's too much going on. There's just too much noise. And what tends to happen is the audience walks away rather than bites off 1 or 2 or 3 elements of that too much noise. They just walk away. So it's about minimizing complexity, or if complexity is a requirement, making sure that it's communicated in such a way that you're obviously not coming across as complex. We do find complexity within some of these programs, a bit of a challenge.
And look, the reality is people are time poor, right? You're engaging business people, retailers, whoever they may be. They've got a job to do. So I guess you need to value that time and make sure how you connect with them, engage them, is relevant and meaningful.
If you've got 2 minutes, you've got 2 minutes. You can't extend it to 10. You've got 2 minutes. So
and you think about even just onboarding somebody. If you want them to do a piece of training, make that super targeted, really relevant, tick the box, get them in the program. What's that next thing you want them to do? If it is a manufacturer engaging a retailer where the manufacturer doesn't have access to that sales data, well, I guess the retailer is going to be focused on, I need to get my sales claims made. Okay, so I've got to get proof, because if I don't, then I'm not going to get rewarded. So their sole focus is just getting those sales recorded. Above and beyond that, they're probably not doing much else, right? Until they start seeing some kind of reward through dollars or points. You might then engage with them, saying, "Hey, John or Sarah, you've got enough points to go and purchase something or convert that to a card or whatever it may be. And that's a kind of like an inflection point to actually connect and, drive some value out of the program.
Yeah, and I think really you've nailed it. I think it's focus on the steps and the moments of truth. Let's not ram it all into one. Let's not try to create a complex single moment of truth. Let's follow them along their journey, and let's make sure that the journey is one that is appealing and digestible. And alongside that, think about your timing and your cadence, because if I'm onboarding somebody and I want to take what is 15 minutes of training, I may choose to remind them at the 5-minute point that they can always come back next week and complete this, because that is actually complementary rather than them abandoning and think that they've lost. Make sure that the components are designed for the audience or for the channel that we're talking to.
Okay.
So that's important. In fact, with one of our clients who's actually on Kademi right now, we've discovered that a lot of the training is better delivered live than recorded, if you like, and they've been doing some live sessions at nighttime in the evening when store, because it's with retail sales associates, when stores are closing, they are then doing live hour-long sessions where people are coming in, and we're actually doing sort of live streams, and we've had an incredible uptake. And what that does is that engages them at the right time on the right topic, and then they leave the live stream and go off and do a course at their leisure off the back of the live stream. So the live stream happens 4 times a year, and it's a sort of it's that inflection point you're talking about, which is interesting.
That's really, really interesting. Something that sort of came to light for me recently was, streaming movies, content, Netflix, etc., where you had a timetable of content that you would switch on your TV at a certain time to watch something.
Yeah.
You would make the time to sit down, watch that piece of content, and then switch off. But now when I turn on my TV, I have so much content. I'm overloaded. Exactly. And what I tend to do is jump between different shows and different movies, and I never get to finish that thing. So maybe with the learning, the training is that people do carve out, whether it's half an hour, 45 minutes, where they'll sit down, they'll listen, they'll do it, they'll tick it off, and they'll move on. That's quite an interesting insight, Ed.
Yeah, and what I found is that, let's rewind back to the beginning. We're sitting in a room planning our program. What is the strategy and plan for the first 6 months? Well, what it might be is the key might be that journey you just talked about, and making sure that in month 1, we're taking all of the audience or that key segment of the audience only that far on the journey. And then we'll save the next bit for month 2 and the next bit for month 3. So they're not sitting down going, oh, where do I start? Where do I start? There's too much. I'm overwhelmed. Engage them that way. And it works because it works for their segment, for their experience, and it engages them better. So that's good.
Yeah, interesting. Really interesting. Though.
Other stuff kind of related that we should touch on is competition. And this is really going to the place of, you're in a sector, you're a manufacturer, you look at your 3 closest competitors and their programs, and you discover that one of the programs is doing really well. What do you do next? You're going to launch a program. Do you copy them? Do you do a Me Too solution, or do you try to do something better than them? And that I actually find is a really interesting dynamic, because more often than not, imitation is a failure, right? The channel program will fail because you're seen as a follower. You are seen by your channel as simply copying the better program. So actually, you can do yourself a lot of damage by simply copying the competition. Remember, you're talking about, in many cases, very niche sectors where everybody knows everybody and people get it, right? Your customers see through you copying your competition. So innovation, even if we've still got to reward you for the same kind of stuff at the same kind of level because we're competing against our competitors. How do we differentiate through communication, through gamification, through rewards, so that we don't appear to be copying the competition? So that's an interesting point of failure that I've certainly seen out there in the market.
Yeah, interesting that. And look, I think differentiation, how do you be different to your competitors? And we talk about rewards, incentives, and training, etc. There is the overall experience of the program, okay? How you do connect, when you connect, the tone, the language, the content, everything all comes together,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How easy it is for someone to reach out if they've got a problem, an inquiry. Most programs have some way of communicating, or the participant to reach out and say, hey, I need some help, I've got a problem, how do I do this? And responding to that person within a reasonable time frame, right? So just creating a really seamless, beautiful experience, I think can go a long way to differentiate yourself from your competitor, which might be very much about, here's your program, some great rewards, we're doing something right, but maybe they lack on that customer experience, that partner experience. So
that's a good point. And I had noted one other thing in sort of my failure list, if you like. It sounds negative, that, doesn't it? Failure list. But I've noted one other thing, which was bring your team with you. And this is really actually enabled by the segmentation in the platform and by the ability to create different reporting levels and different hierarchies. But by bring your team with you, I come back to a very simple analogy, very simple word description, and that is creating a management tool to drive performance. An incentive isn't just about rewarding a channel incentive isn't just about rewarding your channel. It's about creating a management tool to drive performance. If you don't bring your sales reps, your regional managers, your district managers along with you in the program, and you don't give them the tools to use the program as a management tool, the access, they can log in before they make that visit to that dealership, and they can see how the dealer's performing on the program and how his sales team have been performing. He can actually look at the sales data within the platform. He can see who's at what level. You can see who's recently, attained a level of points or redeemed for something special. And suddenly when you call on them, you've now got topics of conversation. You look smart. You look like you're interested in what they're interested in, because you've got a purview of the program that they don't even realize you've got. But you've taken them along with you and you've made them look good. You've given them this tool to help drive performance in their channel. And I think that whole aspect, that whole dynamic, when it's missed, often drives failure in a program. When it's included, it really drives growth and success.
So that's a lack of insight can be a failure, where you don't give your own internal teams, that data and insight that they can use to take forward and re-engage upon it. You can imagine if a sales rep, contacted one of its retailers, right, and said, hey, you're just going to hit your target, you're doing your training, you're doing an amazing job, congratulations, and recognizing them for what they've done.
Exactly.
But that sales rep doesn't have that information, walking into a store, picking up a phone or getting on Zoom, and they're just going in blind. So I think, you're absolutely right. I think giving the right stakeholders access to that data is incredibly important and insightful for them to actually utilize that and leverage it moving forward.
Well, that takes you full circle back to onboarding, because if you've got human beings in the field driving your program and promoting your program, they're the ones making sure that when people leave, we know about it. When new people join, they sign up. Where there's churn, that we're able to stay on top of it. And your program has more penetration in the market than the competition's, again, because the field team are using it as part of their armory to drive performance. It's there to drive sales. They're out there to drive sales. The two things work in concert, right?
I think it's good to understand, there is a broad spectrum of programs that can be, operated in the world. On one end, you might have very, low margin products, right? Yep. Where you might not have a large field team, in which case you may rely on more automation, but try to make it look more natural and human-like to do that engagement. But where you're selling a product which has, good margins, and you've got a full Salesforce team who are going out to market, they will need those tools. And we do have lots of customers who they run programs where training is critical as part of their compliance journey, where they can't actually sell products to resellers unless they're compliant, and they have to resit that training every single year. If they don't qualify, and they can no longer distribute that product to that reseller.
Right.
Now, the sales reps have to have that information. It's mandated. Without that, they can't succeed, because if they see a particular reseller isn't compliant, they have to pick up the phone and say, hey, you need to do this training. It's mandatory. Otherwise, we're going to stop, obviously, fulfilling or pushing that product through you. So, really, really important, giving that visibility to that sort of sales, that internal sort of sales channel. So, Ed, when we talk about sort of beyond the program, something I'd like to talk about, and we touched on this earlier, about managing a program and how important it is. And I'd love to get your insights into how, let's talk about, when I talk about brands, I'm talking about the manufacturers, the distributors, etc. These are the end companies who want to launch the program. Do you think there is a reluctance to invest in ongoing program management? Do they see value in that? Because we've identified and acknowledged that managing a program, iterating and improving it is really important for success. Okay, it can't just sit there and stagnate. So when you engage customers and say, look, we have program management fees, and this is fees, and this is the value that we can offer, is there hesitation? Is there reluctance to invest in that?
Yes, there is. But I think it depends what the experience has been with cost models up to that point. So, you can reflect on this, or you can approach it two ways. For many, many years in the marketplace, a lot of the models for these kind of programs have been, look, buy our rewards and we'll provide you with our platform and our project management at no cost. Now, it's pretty clear, and it's a good model where they're simply going, if we can drive better performance, we get more redemption, which means we get more profit, which means we can fund, of course, our project management support for you, Mr. Client. So you're going to get great support because our motivation is delivering results, because the more results we get, the more revenue we get, which, it's a win-win. Not a bad model. However, it's not very transparent on the rewards side, or not very transparent, if you like, on the program management side. The other approach, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. I must admit, this is the end where we prefer to be, which is, look, candidly, the more effort we make on the project management and program administration side, either on your behalf or partnered with you, the better results you're going to get based on all the things we talked about, Patrick, in the last 40 minutes. As far as rewards are concerned, let's be more transparent on that. However you want to do it. In some cases, we've got clients who are saying, listen, we've got our own reward supply model. Can you just, we'll fulfill the rewards. You just set them up in the site for us, and we'll do the fulfillment. In others, it's, can you fulfill the rewards? But don't make the pricing strategy about the rewards. Make the pricing strategy about the added value from the program management and the return on investment you're going to get from that program management. So if again go full circle back to critical success factors, if it was about growing top line revenue by 10%, let's take a really simple one. If it was growing top line revenue by 10%, and we determined that engaging 60% of this audience with a communication frequency of once a week, and these sort of constructs are going to deliver those results with these kind of rewards, that's the route we're going to go down. But it's very much project management driven. It's a very disciplined process to consistently improve and test and learn and enhance and and make it to 12%, not 10%. But I think it does come back to that pricing model. So if I was to put it simply, if a client said, what's it going to cost me, I'm expecting to spend $100,000 on rewards, and it might be we're used to spending 2% on operating costs, we'd say, well, no, it's probably, going to be closer, the percentage is going to be higher than that. If you're going to have the time from people to drive the project and program management that you need. So how, I suppose it comes back to how transparent one is to partner with a client to deliver those kind of results. But it doesn't matter which way around you approach it, you've got to have a return on investment model.
Absolutely.
It's got to deliver an ROI, right?
And
doesn't matter which
that
way.
goes back to what we spoke about earlier, and that is looking at objectives,
Absolutely.
goals, targets, right? You have to start there, because if you can establish reasonable targets and success, you can then feed in those fees, right? So we'll look, okay, well, this is your expected target, these are our fees, these are your margins, blah, 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 blah. It'll balance off, and you can track that ongoing, okay? And I think that's really, really important, that as the months go by, how are we actually tracking towards these goals, these targets within our program?
Right.
Because that justifies the investment, right?
And at the end of the day, whether you're spending $1 that is split whatever percentage rewards versus operating cost versus another dollar split a different way, doesn't matter. What matters ultimately is that you're delivering that return on investment based on those objectives and those critical success factors that you've talked about. You're absolutely right. So the construct of the, if you like, budget is very much, I think, just about how one chooses to partner. But it is those objectives and critical success factors that matter. Totally.
And I think just to sort of wrap up budget and how you invest. I think one of the, it's a sort of failure, it's loosely, is where businesses invest heavily upfront to build a program.
Yeah. But
then they don't invest enough in the ongoing management. We spoke about this a few weeks ago, where we flip it, right?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Initial investor, you've got an amount of capital you're going to invest in a program over a period of a year, okay? And you get that allocated from the CFO or whoever, or the CEO, managing director. We think, the way we look at this is that initial investment needs to be incredibly light, just the setup, okay? Launch quick, be agile, get it in the market, and then learn and invest. And I think part of that journey is a feedback loop from your participants, your channel partners, and understand what's working, what's not working, and then iterate as you go along. So your point earlier about rewards, you might actually find that actually these rewards just aren't cutting it. So you let them out, put something else in.
Yeah.
So I think where we see this idea of heavily investing initially, I think that you flip that and you say, well, let's just launch a program, cost effectively, get it into market and learn, iterate, and improve. And that's where the management fees come in. And I assume management fees can include a number of hours every month where you can make changes to programs. It might be making changes to communication strategy, rewards, whatever it may be. It could be content or something like that. But I think that's a really good way to flip that, is to look at the ongoing management fee versus the upfront fee.
Totally. And you've nailed it. It's about that iteration, or what I prefer to call constant evolution of a program. And where we're all successful is when we hit year 2 and year 3, right? It's not, one isn't trying to sell into a client a 3-year contract. What one is doing is saying, look, you've come to me with your business problem. Here's the solution to your business problem. But you need me to prove that, or you need us to prove that to you. So let's get it in market fast, as you say. Let's evolve. Let's make sure that we're achieving or exceeding the goals you've set us. Let's constantly evolve it. And then let's sit down in month 12 and say, well, where do you want to go with this? And you're unlikely to say, well, you know what, if we've met or exceeded our goals, and we haven't spent a ridiculous amount of money building this thing, but we've evolved it over time. Generally, most companies say, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. And that's what, coming right back to the beginning, that's what a well planned out program, without sort of no to month 12. You don't know at launch. You do not know the answer to month 12. You know the answer to month 3, month 6, maybe month 9, or you've got a clue, but you're going to evolve. It's like any sort of software product one develops. It evolves over time based on user preferences. That's exactly what we're doing here. And that's the definition of success for us generally is a year 2, year 3 relationship. And furthermore, you wind up with the right people on the bus with those 1, 2, 3 year programs. Because if you didn't have the right people, you wouldn't be delivering the results. And if you weren't delivering the results, you have no right to go into year 2 and year 3. The client's going to say, "I'm done. Let's stop. We're not getting there." So all of those things go together. The one thing I'd say though is, let's flip it on its head. What does it need to feel like? So we're going to launch something in market. We're going to launch a channel program. So instead of all the reducing failure things we've talked about, what does it need to feel like in a sort of fairly long sentence? Well, I mean, obviously it's got to be well designed and thought out, but what do we need? We need clear goals. We need the right audience, or we need clear goals for the right audience. We need a good communications cadence. We need coveted rewards. By coveted, I mean coveted by the audience. We need strong incentive management technology, and we've got to project a solid return on investment. And we need that field team to buy in. If we've got those things, we are not going to fail.
Fantastic. Well, Ed, I think we'll wrap up there. That's been really insightful. I've certainly learned from my conversation. And as always, I love talking to you, and I look forward to talking to you again soon, mate. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.